All right, guys. I've wanted to do a segment on this for a while because your boy 100% struggles with this, but advice on dealing with like blisters, cracked nails, blood blisters, all of those things that pitchers, us freaking softies get. And I've never, all right, so I'll break it down in terms of like my experience with all this stuff, what I've gone through, and then what I've learned, and then kind of what I do now. So this started in high school, and honestly, like, I don't really know the reason behind why some people struggle with it. I've seen people's fingers jacked up and why some people don't. Now, the only thing that I can think of in terms of like calluses and blisters and stuff is like the amount of force that you're putting into the baseball with your fingertips on the seam, right? The seam is rigged. That's going to be the thing that's going to provide that kind of like friction that's going to induce those calluses, blisters, and so on and so forth. But for me personally, I've dealt with cracked nails starting from high school. For some reason, cannot be explained. Index finger, open side, starting in high school, I think like junior year, I would always get a crack midway through the nail. And it would crack, and then once it cracked, you were done. Like once it cracked, you had to like be super precise with like maybe a little clip there and like a shave. And then in high school, my pops would always like do the super glue tactic where we'd like super glue that nail, because any friction or any pressure into that finger was gonna then just keep that crack going. And once that crack got to a certain distance in the nail, right? Like once it got to like, let's see, can you see that? So once it got to like the midline right there, it was done. You were done. I know it's on facial recognition right now, or facial stuff, so I can't really focus in on that nail. You were done, you know, and I'd have to like miss a start, and it was just super frustrating because it was literally just a cracked nail. But what would happen was once that nail cracked to a certain length in the middle, then it would start ripping the skin, and I'd start bleeding and blah, blah, blah. And then like, all right, well, you think, okay, I'm just gonna cut that part of that nail off. So then you would cut it off, but then what you would have was like the finger tip, the skin would press in. Obviously, when you're throwing a baseball and you have force behind the baseball, it would press into that nail, and there'd be that huge open gap from where you cut that nail, and then that would induce a blood blister. And then the blood blister would put you out like freaking another week. And it was just, for me, it was so frustrating, you know, because it was like, what can I do? So high school, we were just always, again, super intentional with filing the nail, making sure that that side of that nail was not coming out of the finger. Like you could have skin, so if you turned your finger around, you wouldn't be able to see nail. Now, I naturally, for some reason, have a ton of like biotin production, so my nails grow super fast. And what I would have to do was like every single day before I'd throw, I'd have to get a nail file and make sure that I was doing it right. Now, there's been times where I've been over intentional with filing my nail, and I've got it too short and got another blister or a callus in the wrong spot. Even right now, I did a file job yesterday before I threw, and you can kind of see that I have that little callus underneath my nail. And I don't want that, because that's too long, or that's too short of a nail. And then so once I got into pro ball, it honestly, I think my first couple years, it went away. So then we thought that it was my split that was kind of doing it. And it could have been, because if you think about the way that I throw a split, like both fingers are getting the side of the ball, and it would be that open side of that nail that maybe could pull that nail off, right? And I have such high acceleration of hand speed that I can only imagine how much force I'm putting behind the baseball. So I think it was in 2015 when I came out of the pen, and I start to think about it now, like, okay, well, high school, I was throwing hard, you know, early stages of my career of pro ball, I wasn't really throwing that hard. And then 15, once it started happening again, I was throwing hard again, right? Hardest I've ever really thrown. So it started happening again. And then someone came to me with the idea, like, you need to go get a manicure and then get an acrylics nail. So I was like, I had no idea what that was. I kind of felt embarrassed going into a nail salon. I got my first one, and then I threw, and it was like a whole new world. I've actually wanted to do a segment on this. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if it holds up, but I've done a little experimenting on it, but I haven't gotten into acrylics in a while, #COVID. But I think if you can get an acrylics nail, it's one of those fake nails that they put on, it's like $5 if you go, or maybe 3, and I just give them 5 because I have a $2 tip. But you put a fake nail on, now you're maybe more capable of producing more force in the baseball. You got a fake hard nail on. Could be a little bit of spin rate theory. Write that down, maybe test it yourself, who knows. But I would get an acrylics nail, and then I would shave. I'd have to be still intentional with the clipping of it, or not the clipping, but the nail file. I have a nail file everywhere I go. So then I would just make sure that I'm doing the same thing with the acrylics. The acrylics was like a safety measure because I would always crack this nail. Like, it would happen all the time. And now looking back on it, it was probably just because I wasn't like super intentional with filing my nail down. You know, I would do it maybe like once a week, and then it would happen, and then I was screwed. So I was like, all right, gotta go get my acrylics. Now, honestly, throughout this whole COVID thing with nail files, like, or nail salons being closed, I've had to be super mindful of that now, and make sure that I make sure that I put my nail file in my glove. So like when I grab my glove to go play catch, it's like right there. So I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta file my nail. So that's another thing. But yeah, I've seen guys get like the calluses that turn into blisters, and you know, on both fingers. Some guys get it on the middle finger. It obviously all varies depending on how you like release the ball and what fingers are behind the ball. But that's something that, I mean, hopefully that helps in terms of, you know, what I've struggled with and what I've learned is the acrylics nail can be a great kind of scapegoat option. The super glue is another quick option that always worked for me in high school. But yeah, I haven't met too many people that struggle with the cracked nail thing. I think my nails are just really weak. But there's another tip. If you do crack your nail, push the follicles down. That, it's supposed to be an old wives' tale that helps with growing your nail quicker. So if you like can take that and like push it down into the skin, who knows if that's true, but something I was always told. So yeah, it was always for me, this little corner rigid spot of this nail would like somehow get caught on the baseball, and it would just pull and would end up just ripping the nail. And it was like you'd feel it right when it happened. Or sorry, no, the opposite. I wouldn't feel it right when it happened, and then I would only feel it right when it started to bleed, like right when it got to the middle. So then I started getting accustomed to, like, every time I would have a throwing session, I'd be like, all right, halfway through, look at my nail, where's it at? Because as soon as it goes like a millimeter, it's like, dang it, dude. Now you know, like, oh, I gotta freaking get an acrylics and all this stuff. But knock on wood, it's been good so far during my time here in Puerto Rico. So just gotta keep being intentional, keep shaving the sides. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Rock on. That's Hang Loose. Rock on. Dope.